The emergency room smelled like antiseptic, adrenaline, and bad decisions. Dr. Elise Carter moved with practiced precision through the chaos, her voice calm, her hands steady. She didn't hear the sirens anymore. They blended into the rhythm of the hospital, just like the beeping monitors and the quiet sobs behind curtains. "GSW incoming," a nurse called. "Female officer, shoulder wound, conscious but losing blood." Elise didn't blink. "Bay 3, let's prep." The door swung open moments later, and they wheeled in a woman with torn navy blue sleeves and blood-soaked gauze pressed against her shoulder. Even pale and covered in grime, the woman had presence, the kind that filled a room before she even said a word. "Still talking, still breathing," the paramedic muttered. Tried to disarm a suspect. Again, Elise stepped in, snapping gloves over her hands. "Let's keep her that way." As she leaned over the patient, she met a pair of hazel eyes, sharp, alert, despite the pain. "Well, you've got a nice face," the officer said through gritted teeth. "Terrible bedside manner, though." Elise didn't flinch. "I'm here to stop the bleeding, not charm you." "Too bad. I like multitaskers." Elise's jaw tightened. She didn't engage. She never did. She focused on the wound, ignoring the way the woman's voice lingered in her chest like static. "Focus, Elise. She's just another patient." But something in those eyes, defiant, alive, made her hesitate for half a second longer than she should have. And in her world, half a second meant something. "Name?" she asked, checking vitals. "Detective Rachel Hayes. And you?" "Elise Carter," she replied automatically. Rachel smiled. "Now we're properly introduced. Try not to kill me, Doc." Elise pressed gauze harder than necessary. "I don't kill people, Detective. I save them." Rachel hated hospitals. The sterile walls, the way everything smelled too clean, like they were trying to wash away the fact that people died here every day. She woke with a dull ache in her shoulder and a sharper one in her chest. Her first instinct was to move, get up, go. Sitting still never ended well. But the second she tried to swing her legs over the edge of the bed, a calm but firm voice cut through the haze. "Don't even think about it." Rachel turned, and there she was again, Dr. Elise Carter, pale blue scrubs, dark brown hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun, and eyes like polished stone. "You again," Rachel muttered. "Thought you patched me up already." "I did, which is why you're not going anywhere." Rachel tried to smirk. "Doc, I've had worse. Let me sign whatever form gets me out of here and we'll call it even." "No." That stopped her. "Just, no." Rachel tilted her head, testing. "You always this charming with your patients?" Elise crossed her arms. "Only the ones trying to undo my work 6 hours after surgery." Rachel squinted. "You really don't bend, do you?" "Not for people trying to bleed out in my hallways, no." It was the way Elise said it. Flat, professional. But Rachel caught something flicker underneath. Not irritation, worry. And that did something unexpected. It made Rachel want to push harder. Not to leave, but to see what else the good doctor was hiding behind that icy exterior. "You sedate all your patients when they don't listen?" she asked. Elise picked up the chart. "Only the stubborn ones." Rachel chuckled, then winced. The pain pulled at her, but so did the quiet gravity of the woman standing in front of her. Elise Carter wasn't just trying to keep her alive. She cared. She didn't want to, but she did. Rachel had seen enough people in this place go through the motions. This wasn't that. This was different. And something told her. Elise felt it too. The hospital was quieter now. The post-surgery chaos had faded into a steady hum. The rhythm Elise Carter preferred. Predictable. Controlled. She reviewed patient charts at the nurse's station, flipping through names, symptoms, vitals, and paused when she reached Hayes. Rachel. Shoulder stabilized. No sign of infection. Due for discharge evaluation. Elise closed the file slowly, lips pressed in a line. She told herself it was just routine, but when she passed by room 12 and saw the door ajar, her steps halted. Inside, a uniformed officer stood by Rachel's bedside, speaking in a low, insistent tone. "Captain wants the statement ASAP. We need you downtown in 20. Rachel looked groggy, pale, still wearing a hospital gown. One arm was bandaged, the other clutched a paper cup of cold coffee. "Are you serious?" Rachel asked. You see the IV, right? She said you're stable. We need the report before the media gets ahead of it. Elise's voice cut through the tension like a blade. She's not going anywhere. The officer turned. Excuse me. I said? Elise repeated, stepping between them. She is not cleared for transport, and until I sign her release, she remains under my care. Rachel blinked. Dr. Carter. Elise didn't look at her. Her attention was locked on the officer. Calm, steely. This isn't a negotiation. Leave. For a second, no one moved. Then the officer scoffed and muttered something under her breath before exiting the room. Silence followed. Heavy, unspoken. Rachel finally spoke. So, you can be intimidating when you want to be. Elise exhaled, her shoulders tightening. You shouldn't be giving statements right now. Rachel studied her. You were ready to go full security mode on her. Over me. Elise didn't respond. She adjusted the IV line instead, her fingers efficient, distant. But when she turned to leave, her hand brushed the edge of Rachel's chart and lingered, just for a second. Then she caught herself, stiffened, and walked out without another word. Rachel watched her go, something new sparking behind her tired eyes. Rachel lay awake in the dim hospital room, one arm draped over her face. The morphine had dulled the pain, but not the memory. She was back there again, in that other ER. Sirens screaming, Marcus gasping for breath, blood on her hands. The doctor shaking his head. They didn't catch it in time. She blinked hard, forcing it away. But some ghosts didn't leave when you asked nicely. The door creaked. Soft footsteps. Still awake? Elise's voice was low, like a secret. Rachel pulled her arm away. Apparently, morphine doesn't knock out trauma. Elise moved to check the monitors, but Rachel could tell she wasn't on rounds anymore. Not really. You always make late-night visits, or am I special? Elise didn't smile. But she didn't walk away either. I was just passing by, she said quietly. Rachel studied her under the low hospital light, dark circles beneath Elise's eyes, the way her arms stayed crossed even when she sat in the chair beside the bed. Let me guess. You don't sleep either, Rachel said. A pause. Then Elise nodded. Not when the ER's been like tonight? Rachel shifted, her voice softening. You ever lose one? It was the wrong question. Or maybe the right one. Elise went still. Yes, she said. One word. Raw. Rachel didn't press. She didn't joke. I lost mine too, she said. Partner. Marcus. It was stupid. Routine call. Got blindsided. A beat. They didn't catch it in time, she whispered. Elise looked at her then. Really looked. The armor was still there, but something cracked beneath it. I'm sorry, Elise said. And she meant it. They sat in silence. No monitor beeps. No sirens. Then Elise's hand moved. Lightly. Gently. She rested it on Rachel's good shoulder. Just a touch. Warm. Steady. Rachel didn't say anything. Neither did Elise. But the silence between them felt less like distance and more like understanding. Dr. Elise Carter stared at the discharge form on her desk for too long. The paperwork was simple. Vitals stable, no sign of infection, shoulder mobility within acceptable range. Detective Rachel Hayes was medically cleared to go home. Elise signed her name at the bottom. Crisp. Clean. She told herself it was a relief. One less complication in her ward. One less face lingering in her thoughts. And yet, the quiet ache in her chest disagreed. When Elise entered room 12, Rachel was sitting on the edge of the bed, already half-dressed in her uniform pants and a faded hoodie that smelled like station house coffee. Well, Rachel said, trying for casual, guess you're finally kicking me out. Elise handed over the envelope of aftercare instructions, eyes averted. You'll need to avoid lifting anything for a few weeks. No field work. Rachel raised a brow. You planning to follow me around and make sure I behave? I'm sure your captain can handle that. A flicker of silence passed between them. Rachel looked down at the envelope, then reached into her hoodie pocket. I wanted to give you this. She held out a small card. Elise hesitated. It's not a big deal, Rachel added quickly. Just in case, if you ever need backup, or coffee, or someone to argue with. Elise took the card. Their fingers brushed, and it felt like more than skin. It felt like static. Rachel's smile faltered slightly. You don't have to use it. I won't. Elise said, too quickly, too flat. Rachel laughed softly without humor. Yeah, didn't think so. She grabbed her bag and walked toward the exit. Elise watched her go, through the sliding glass doors, across the parking lot, until the reflection disappeared. Only then did she return to her office, shut the door, and sit down. She stared at the card for a long moment before slipping it into the back of a drawer. Just in case, she whispered, and tried not to wonder why her hands were shaking. 3 nights passed. Elise told herself she'd forgotten, that Rachel Hayes was just another patient. Interesting, sure, but not permanent. She told herself that enough times, she almost believed it, until the dream. It hit like a lightning strike. In it, she was back in the ER. Lights flashing, alarms screaming, blood pouring from Rachel's chest, not her shoulder. Her eyes open, but unseeing. Elise, Rachel gasped in the dream. You weren't there. Elise jolted awake in her bed, breath caught in her throat, the sheets tangled around her legs like restraints. She sat up in the dark, cold sweat clinging to her skin. Her eyes landed on the drawer beside her bed. She didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, she stood and walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water with trembling hands, and stared out the window at the city lights. Rachel wasn't her patient anymore, but that didn't stop her from seeing her face everywhere. She returned to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the mattress, reached for the drawer, slowly like touching something fragile. The card was still there, simple, plain, but to Elise, it pulsed like a live wire. At 3:11 a.m., she picked up her phone, typed in the number, stared at the screen. Her thumb hovered over the call button, then stopped. She placed the phone face down and closed her eyes. The fear wasn't about calling. It was about what might happen if Rachel answered. It was a lie, of course. Rachel told herself she was just in the neighborhood, needed coffee, thought she might check in on the barista who got stabbed last week. But somehow, her boots led her back to the hospital cafe. Same one where she'd argued with Elise Carter over blood pressure and discharge orders. Same one where she'd pretended not to care. She stood outside the glass wall, hands in her jacket pockets, watching the scene inside like it was a movie she wasn't supposed to star in. There she was, Elise Carter, exhausted, shoulders tight, hair pinned up in that severe bun that somehow still looked elegant. She leaned on the counter, nursing what was probably her 4th cup of hospital coffee. Her expression was blank, but Rachel recognized the weight in her eyes. That woman never slowed down, not even to breathe. Rachel turned to leave. She wasn't supposed to be here. This was too much. But before she could back away, Elise looked up, their eyes locked through the glass. Rachel froze. Elise didn't wave, didn't smile, just tilted her head slightly, like she was surprised, but not displeased. Rachel opened the door before she could change her mind. Hey, she said, trying not to sound out of breath. We keep bumping into each other. Weird, huh? Elise raised an eyebrow. You're at a hospital cafe in the middle of the afternoon, 3 blocks from your precinct. Rachel grinned. Coincidences happen. Elise didn't argue. She gestured to the seat across from her. Rachel sat. They didn't speak for a moment. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was charged. Elise stirred her coffee absently. Still taking it easy, I hope. Rachel shrugged. Define easy. You're impossible, Elise muttered. And you keep noticing. A small smile flickered at the edge of Elise's lips, almost like it escaped by accident. It vanished just as quickly. Rachel leaned back. Look, I didn't come to push buttons. I don't know. Thought maybe we could talk. Without IVs and sedatives. Elise opened her mouth, but her pager beeped. Urgent. Her face shifted instantly into focus, into duty. I have to go, she said, already rising. Rachel nodded, trying not to let disappointment show. Of course. Another time. Elise hesitated. You really should rest. You really should stop telling me what to do. They shared a glance. The moment almost said more than words. Then Elise was gone, her shadow disappearing into the corridor, and Rachel was left in the silence again. But something about the way Elise had looked at her, it wasn't over. It was just after midnight when Elise picked up her phone. She didn't hesitate this time. She dialed. The line rang once, twice. Detective Hayes. Rachel answered, voice raspy with sleep. It's Dr. Carter, Elise said. Sorry, I hope I didn't wake you. There was a pause, then a soft chuckle. Not at all. I have a gift for waking up in the middle of the night. Cop thing. Elise exhaled. I was calling about your follow-up. That sounds like a lie, Doc. Elise almost smiled. Maybe. Another pause. Rachel's voice softened. You okay? That question? No one ever asked her that. I don't know, Elise admitted. I had a long day, and I kept thinking about you. Rachel's breath caught. Elise heard it. You dreamt about me, didn't you? Rachel teased gently. Elise didn't answer right away. I did. Silence. Then Rachel's voice, low and real. Me too. They talked for 2 hours. Not about injuries, not about medicine, about Marcus, about Elise's first year in trauma, about the songs they hated and the food they loved, about how both of them had forgotten what it was like to laugh and mean it. When the call finally ended, Elise sat in the dark, the phone warm in her hand. She didn't feel alone, not tonight. Rachel was supposed to be here for a simple follow-up. She didn't even want to come, but her captain insisted. Let the doctor clear you, she'd said. Then we'll talk about light duty. Rachel hated hospitals, hated the way the lights buzzed, hated the antiseptic stench, hated how quiet they could be right before everything fell apart. And just like that, it did. The first scream came from the ER entrance, then the sound, unmistakable, the crack of a gunshot. Rachel froze in place just outside the exam room. Nurses ducked, patients screamed. A man burst in, waving a handgun, shouting something incoherent. She felt it before she saw it. The shift in the air, the panic, the way people scattered like birds. Her instincts kicked in. She reached for her weapon. Nothing. She was unarmed, healing, vulnerable. She turned and saw Elise across the corridor. Their eyes met. Elise's face went white. You can't, she mouthed. You're not cleared. You're not ready. Rachel shook her head once. Her body moved before her mind caught up. Someone had to act, and no one else was. She ducked behind a supply cart, creeping low. Her shoulder throbbed. She gritted her teeth. The man was shouting at a nurse now, demanding something. His hands were shaking. He was going to shoot someone. Rachel stepped forward, slowly, calm voice. Hey, she said. You don't want to do this. He turned, gun raised. Her hands went up. Her badge was barely visible on her belt. You're not listening, he yelled. I am, she said softly. I'm listening now. Behind him she saw Elise, eyes wide, frozen in place, watching her. Rachel took a slow step forward, then another. And when he flinched, she moved, grabbed his wrist, twisted, pain flaring in her shoulder like fire. The gun clattered. Security tackled him from behind. It was over in seconds. But Rachel couldn't breathe. Everything went sideways. The adrenaline drained. She collapsed against the wall, her shoulder screaming in protest. The last thing she saw before blacking out was Elise running toward her. Elise's hands were shaking. Not in surgery. Not when the man had a gun. Not when Rachel threw herself in the line of fire with one arm in a sling. But now, here, in the trauma bay, trying to stop the bleeding, her hands were trembling. She pressed gauze against Rachel's reopened wound, forcing her voice steady. You are insane. Rachel blinked up at her, groggy. You're welcome. You could have died. Rachel smiled faintly. But I didn't. You're good at what you do, Doc. That's not the point, Elise snapped. Her voice cracked, not with anger, with fear. She caught herself, swallowed it down. But Rachel saw it. She always did. I knew you'd patch me up, Rachel said softly. Elise stared at her, blood on her gloves, her jaw clenched. She leaned in, so close, their faces inches apart, and for a moment she almost did it, almost kissed her. She could feel Rachel's breath, the question in her eyes. But Elise pulled back. You need to stop trying to die, she whispered. Rachel's smile faded. What are you really scared of? She asked. Elise didn't answer, but her silence said enough. Elise Carter let every call go to voicemail. For 7 days, she silenced her phone, ignored messages, buried herself in work. She avoided every hallway where Rachel might appear, skipped her usual rounds at the cafe, left through back exits like a ghost. It was the only way she knew how to survive. Save them. Let them go. Don't feel. But this time, it wasn't working. Rachel Hayes wasn't just another patient. Elise had seen too much. The way Rachel's smile cracked when she was in pain. The way her voice softened during those midnight calls. The way her hands had trembled just before that hostage nearly pulled the trigger. And the worst part? The fear Elise had felt when Rachel was wheeled into the ER. Limp, bleeding, her pulse fading fast. That terror still hadn't left her. Not since the last time. The one she never talked about. The one she never got to save. She told herself it was better this way. No more risks. No more chances. No more waking up in cold sweat wondering if the person you let in would live to see the next morning. But then came the knock. She opened the door to find Rachel standing there, a hoodie over her t-shirt, one arm still stiff in the sling, eyes dark with exhaustion, and something else. Something Elise couldn't name. "You're not answering me," Rachel said quietly. Elise didn't move. "I wasn't sure if I should come," Rachel added, her voice steadier than she felt. "But here I am." "You shouldn't be." Rachel took a breath. "I get it. You're scared." Elise's eyes flashed. "Don't tell me what I feel." "You pulled away," Rachel said, "right after telling me to stop trying to die. So which is it, Elise? You want me gone or not bleeding on your floor? That's not fair." "No," Rachel cut in. "It's not. None of this is. But I'm standing here anyway." Elise's jaw clenched. Her voice dropped. "I don't do this. I don't get close. Not anymore." Rachel's face softened. "Because you lost someone." That landed like a punch. Elise didn't deny it. "I can't go through that again," she whispered. "I can't watch someone I care about get hurt and not know if I'll lose them too." Rachel didn't step forward. She didn't plead. She just nodded once. "Okay," she said. "I hear you." And then she left. Elise closed the door, and for the first time in years, she let herself cry. She didn't even remember walking back to the precinct. She just appeared there, like muscle memory had taken over. One step after another, one breath at a time. Rachel sat on the bench in the locker room, still wearing the hoodie, still feeling the echo of Elise's voice ringing in her ears. "I don't do this." Her partner passed by. "Hey, you good?" Rachel forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." Lie. She looked down at her badge, then at the assignment board. Her eyes locked on one of the calls. High-risk warrant. Dangerous neighborhood. Multiple suspects. Backup needed. She grabbed her gear, not because she had something to prove, because she couldn't sit still, because standing still meant feeling, and feeling meant remembering everything she'd just lost, or maybe never had to begin with. She didn't want to die, but tonight, she wasn't trying very hard to live either. The ER was unusually quiet for a Friday night. Elise Carter sat at the nurse's station, reviewing labs, her focus mechanical. She hadn't slept more than 3 hours in 2 days, and it showed. Dark circles, a tension in her shoulders that never quite let up. She told herself the silence was a gift, but the silence never lasted. A voice crackled over the intercom. "Incoming trauma. Female. Gunshot wound. Officer down." Elise didn't blink at first. It was routine. It happened. But then, name on ID, Rachel Hayes. The world stopped. The air left her lungs before she realized she'd stood up. She dropped the chart in her hand, barely aware of the noise it made as it hit the floor. Rachel. She moved fast. She didn't need a trauma bay. She needed that trauma bay. The one closest to the entrance. The one she could already hear being prepped. She pushed through the doors just as the paramedics rolled in the gurney. Rachel was pale. Blood soaked the front of her shirt. There was a deep wound to the side of her abdomen, and her arm, the same one, was re-injured. Her breathing was shallow. Too shallow. Elise didn't speak. She just stepped in and took over. "Push 2-liter saline wide open," she barked. "Get me a cross-match. And someone page the OR, now." Someone hesitated. "Dr. Carter." "I said now." She hovered over Rachel, placing pressure on the wound. Gauze and hands moving too fast to be graceful. Rachel's eyes fluttered open, barely. Still. "Chasing me?" she whispered. Elise didn't cry. "Not yet. I told you to be careful," she said softly. "Why didn't you listen?" Rachel tried to smile. Couldn't. And then, the monitor flatlined. "No," Elise said, louder this time. "No, no, not her." She started compressions. "Come on, don't do this. Not her." Shock pads. Adrenaline. The sound of orders flying like bullets. The team around her barely kept up. But Elise didn't stop. "Come back," she whispered. "Come back." And then, a heartbeat. Weak, faint, but real. Rachel was still there. Elise collapsed back in her chair as they wheeled her to surgery. Her hands were steady. Her heart was breaking. Elise didn't leave. Not after the surgery. Not after the third cup of vending machine coffee. Not even when her shift technically ended 3 hours ago. She sat beside Rachel's bed, arms folded tightly, staring at the heart monitor like she could will it to keep working. Every beep was a reminder that Rachel was alive. Barely. A nurse passed by and paused. "You never do this," she said quietly. Elise didn't answer. She reached out and gently touched Rachel's hand. Her fingers were cold, pale. "You stubborn, reckless idiot," she whispered. "I told you I couldn't do this again." Her voice cracked. "But I lied." She closed her eyes, gripping Rachel's hand tighter. "I pushed you away because I was terrified." A pause. "I still am." She rested her forehead against the edge of the bed. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't leave me." Everything felt heavy. Rachel floated between sleep and pain, light and shadow. Voices blurred into static. Machines hummed. Her body ached, but something anchored her. A warmth at her hand. She blinked. Slowly, the haze cleared. White ceiling, IV line, the familiar rhythm of a heart monitor. And beside her, asleep in an unforgiving chair, head tilted awkwardly, still in scrubs, was Elise Carter. Rachel's eyes stung. Elise was holding her hand. Even in sleep, she hadn't let go. Rachel turned her head just enough for the movement to stir Elise. Their eyes met. Elise straightened instantly, brushing hair back from her face, trying to hide the crack in her voice. "You're awake," she breathed. Rachel tried to speak. It came out hoarse. "Apparently?" Elise checked the monitor, the IV. Anything to avoid the look Rachel was giving her. "You almost died," she said finally. Rachel managed a faint smile. "But I didn't." Elise didn't smile back. Instead, she whispered, "I was so scared." Rachel reached out with her free hand, her movement shaky. "I'm sorry," she said. "For what?" "For running. For being reckless. For not calling." Elise looked at her. Really looked. And what Rachel saw in her expression wasn't distance. It wasn't professionalism. It was pain, fear, and something more. "You weren't the only one running," Elise said. She didn't know how to say it, but the words had been building inside her for days, pressing against her ribs like broken glass. "I lost someone," she said quietly. "A paramedic. Years ago. She bled out on my table. I told myself it was just another patient, but it wasn't. And when she died," Elise's throat closed. "I promised I'd never let that happen again, that I'd never let anyone close enough to matter." Rachel didn't interrupt. She didn't move. "But you," Elise's voice cracked. "You made me break that promise." Silence. Then so softly it was barely audible. "I'm terrified." Rachel reached for her hand. This time, Elise didn't pull away. "I'm terrified, too," Rachel whispered. "But I'm more afraid of not trying." Their fingers intertwined. No more pretending. No more pushing away. Only truth, quiet and trembling between them. And this time, Elise let herself breathe. The hospital room was quiet, save for the monitor's soft rhythm and the occasional shuffle of nurses outside the door. Rachel sat up, slow but steady, propped against pillows. Her shoulder ached, but she didn't mind. Not when Elise Carter was sitting at the foot of the bed, calm but clearly nervous. It wasn't the silence that felt different. It was the absence of walls. Rachel cleared her throat. "So, what happens now?" Elise blinked, caught off guard. "With your recovery?" Rachel smiled faintly. "With us." Elise hesitated. For once, no polished reply, no escape route. "I don't know," she admitted. "I'm used to rules, distance, things I can control." Rachel nodded. "And I'm used to chaos, risk, jumping without looking." They sat with that for a beat. "I need you to be more careful," Elise said gently. "Not just for you, for me." Rachel's gaze softened. And I need you to stop shutting me out. If we do this, I have to know you'll let me in. Elise looked down. This won't be easy. Rachel leaned forward. Nothing worth it ever is. Their eyes met. No spark, no fire. Just quiet understanding, something real. They kept it simple. A week after Rachel was discharged, she texted Elise. Dinner tonight? Nothing fancy. No bullet wounds this time. Elise replied with an address and a time. When Rachel pulled up in her car, still stiff, still bandaged, Elise was already waiting on the hospital steps, hair loose for the first time, a soft sweater replacing her usual coat. Rachel couldn't look away. They drove to a quiet bistro. Not a romantic cliché, just dim lights, comfort food, and no one looking too closely. Conversation was clumsy at first, half laughs and nervous glances. But then Elise asked about Rachel's first case. Rachel asked about Elise's first save. The tension melted. By dessert, Elise was laughing freely. By the time they left, Rachel had forgotten she was supposed to be healing. They walked through a nearby park, crisp evening air wrapping around them. Elise shivered. Without thinking, Rachel shrugged off her jacket and draped it over Elise's shoulders. Elise smiled, not polite, not guarded, grateful. They stopped beneath a quiet street lamp. The moment stretched. And when Rachel leaned in, Elise didn't flinch. Their lips met, soft, tentative, unhurried, not desperate, certain. When they pulled apart, neither said a word. They didn't have to. The ER hadn't changed. Same blinking monitors, same two bright lights, same buzzing overhead speakers. Elise Carter moved through the halls like she always had, calm, focused, sharp. But something had changed. As she stepped into the break room between patients, her phone vibrated in her coat pocket. She pulled it out and smiled. Rachel, made it through the day. No bruises, no bullets. See you tonight. Elise stared at the message for a moment, that quiet warmth blooming in her chest again. Every day, after every shift, Rachel checked in, not because Elise asked her to, but because she understood what Elise needed. Elise typed a simple reply. I'll bring the wine. Her gaze drifted to the photo on her desk. It wasn't hidden in a drawer anymore. It was of the two of them, Rachel grinning, Elise almost smiling, both of them flushed from wind and laughter after that weekend hike they'd almost canceled. Behind her, a nurse leaned in. I don't think I've ever seen you smile like that, Dr. Carter. Elise didn't look up. I never used to. The apartment smelled like garlic and fresh basil. Rachel stirred the sauce, one-handed as always, while music played low in the background. She was still sore from a training exercise, but it didn't matter. Not tonight. She glanced at the clock. Right on time. A knock at the door. She opened it to find Elise holding a brown paper bag with takeout and a bottle of wine. Classy, Rachel teased. Elise stepped inside, closing the door behind her. I live to impress. They settled into their routine with ease. Dinner on the couch, Rachel with bare feet tucked under her, Elise pulling her hair down for once. Comfort, not perfection, but real. Later, as the last light of day faded behind the city skyline, they stood on the balcony in quiet. I'm thinking about applying for the detective position, Rachel said suddenly. Elise's brow furrowed. That's more desk work. Less field risk. Rachel nodded. Fewer gunshot wounds. Elise looked at her carefully. Are you doing this for me? Rachel took her hand. No, I'm doing it for us. Elise didn't speak. She leaned in instead, kissed her softly. Then let's build something. Together they watched the sun dip below the skyline. No sirens, no running, just peace. Finally.